All right, we are, somewhat strangely, in a bookshop. Welcome, pro soccer revolutionaries. We are here, as you may have guessed, with Daddy Keir, one of the godfathers of the Pro Revolution Soccer project, the OG. From back from the glory days of the 2022 World Cup that half of you probably boycotted in the end, but you know, we stated our reasons for not doing that at the time. Hello, mate. It's nice to see you again. This person to my left is Kat Sinclair, who is going to be a regular co-host of Pro Revolution Soccer, along with me and Juliet and a guy called Joe Kennedy, who you'll meet on a later episode. But we're here with Keir to talk about Keir and a couple of other guys' new book, which is very exciting and which we are going to sort of like, less clumsily than we were worried about, map onto the topic of association football. But before that, we're going to talk about Leeds, aren't we? Because like, they're doing really well. Yeah. I suppose, you know, a good place to start actually might be Dominic Calvert-Lewin and how dreamy he is, and how if he was sort of as elegant a footballer as he is a human being, I think I would be questioning my own sexuality, frankly. Like, eyelashes to die for. Yeah, you must be enjoying it, huh?
He's a good-looking lad, yeah.
He's a good lad.
No, yeah, I mean, I wasn't really enjoying the beginning of the season. And it was one of those where, you know, when you come up, as you well know, Tom, when you come up, the gulf is big and, you know, you don't know if you're going to stay, basically. And it got to the stage when we were in the relegation zone and we were playing pretty badly, that I thought, oh, God, that's it, we're going down again. And like, it's going to be grim, basically. And it all changed at half-time at Chelsea, basically. Because Farke had basically finally twigged on this new sort of setup, basically based around Dominic Calvert-Lewin's assets, basically, and style of play.
Or his eyelashes.
Yeah, sure, if his eyelashes are
flicking it on.
Yeah, basically, and it was, you know, sort of part of it was a little bit of like, you know, like play it long, like anti-Bielsa ball sort of thing, and then it's sort of like five at the back, sort of, you know, with two fullbacks going forward, etc. It's totally steady things there. And it's just, it's been really shocking how it's not just that we've been sort of winning, but like actually it's like really entertaining. You know, it's competitive. You know, even against the big sides, everyone apart from Arsenal came absolutely whooped our arse, basically.
In the most boring way imaginable.
Classic. Not for the first time. Yeah, so like, and like, you know, everyone was saying Daniel Farke was going to lose his job after the Chelsea match. And and I thought he was off. And, you know, he showed a tactical flexibility I didn't think he was possible. I didn't think he had it in him, basically. So it's all good. I think we're staying up.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, we've got a 10-point gap at the minute. I think it's still a 10-point gap.
Yeah, well, yeah, it looks all right then, yeah. It'd have to be a cock-up of fairly gargantuan proportions.
Yeah. Well, I know a team that does that quite regularly.
Not out of the question, is it? I was wondering if we could ask you a little bit more about just the general book to start with before we map it maybe slightly clumsily onto football. It's called Radical Abundance. Give us a bit of an idea about the title, first of all.
Yeah, so it's called Radical Abundance. I wrote it with two other guys, Kai Heron and Bertie Russell. And we're all sort of co-directors of an organisation called Abundance. It's sort of like a think tank. We're trying to set projects up and all that sort of stuff.
It's just part of your management consultant for the revolution.
It very much is in the management consultant for the revolution. It is basically. That's part of what we do. Is that, like, you know, we sort of work with projects to try and set up commonly owned stuff. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to talk about it a bit later. We're in October Books in Southampton, and you're going to do a book launch tour. But like, the book is split into two halves. The first half is like, it starts off, this is what's wrong with the world. And we have these two sort of categories. We sort of say that the current moment is dominated by, we call it bullshit abundance and artificial scarcity. You get an abundance of stuff you don't need, but a complete scarcity of stuff you do need, and we sort of talk about the reasons for that. And then we offer a theory of, like, you know, this is what's wrong with the world, this is what you need to do about it. And so we offer like an abstract idea of, like, transition, basically. We sort of say, look, transition is the problem of our time. Like lots of people think about it as like transition in energy systems,
Yeah.
you know, away from coal, etc. It's not been happening, even though there's been a big increase in.
It might be going backwards in some cases.
It's a really weird moment because there's huge amounts more of renewable energy, primarily from China, but the amount of coal is still going up, the amount of oil, etc. So like that's one idea of what transition is. We say, look, if there's another crisis, not just ecological crisis. There's been economic stagnation, really across the globe, apart from China, which has got a different model. Still capitalist, but a different model. But particularly in the UK, like there's just economic stagnation, very low rates of growth, which mean that living standards just are not going up for a wide enough portion of the population to sort of maintain political stability or social stability, something like that. Which is why you have, this mad seesawing of politics and reform at, well, we're at 30%, now they're at like 24, 25%. It's economic stagnation, but like from 2006, there was 17 years of zero real wage growth. So wages didn't go up in real terms for 17 years. And you have to go back to like the 225, 230 years to get a similar period. So it's never happened before in modern capitalism. And we're saying, look, that's the problem. The problem is that capitalism has run itself to a position where it can't do the things that people wanted it to do before. And at the same time, it's undermining all of the basis for, well, economic activity or even just human civilization. So it's just that we have this huge task. We have to get out of it, basically. And so we offer a theory of transition and say, like, there's all this sort of noise going on around politics. But we don't sort of face up to like the actual huge problem, which is how do you get out of capitalism in the quickest possible way, basically. And we offer a couple of principles of that. Like you have to build up popular protagonism, and you have to we have this other thing called contested reproduction, which is the problem with transition. One of the big problems of like changing from one system to another system is you rely on the existing system to live. That's true for electricity. You can't just get rid of like coal power. You have to build up the other system while that system's there. It's the same in economic systems. You have to build up an alternative system while the old system is in existence, and their intention, and then eventually one will, they will contest over which system are people going to reproduce their lives through, basically.
There's not an on-off switch.
There's not an on-off switch, no. And so we sort of go through that, and then we offer this concept called the public-common partnership as one way you could try and do that, basically. And we don't have to go into public-common partnerships, but like it's a reverse engineer of public-private partnerships. We're trying to reverse the effects of public-private partnerships, where the state, you give public money to try to facilitate private investment in areas that the state wants it to happen. So in effect, it's that huge public subsidy. All that money doesn't go to like October Books, doesn't go to like, the kebab shop down the road. It goes to the biggest asset management firms in the world, based the most rapacious. And what happens to that money? Like capitalism is set up these days in a way in which money just funnels to the very top. So that whole sequence is just delivered to the world that we live now, which is where you have oligarchs with incredible wealth. That wealth, they're not using that to build pyramids. They are building big yachts. They're using that to basically capture political systems and regulatory systems, etc. So oligarchic wealth is to such an extent that basically democracy can't work. You have to build up a supplementary form of social power, basically, in order to make formal democratic structures even approach being able to work. So that's what public-common partnership is, trying to build up those sorts of forms of social power through getting assets, resources, services, football clubs under common ownership. See, a nice little segue into sort of like common or social ownership, basically. And then we're trying to construct ways in which communities get together and they decide on the most important thing, which is where does a surplus get invested? If you want to control a society, you control the investment function. You decide what happens to social surplus, how it gets invested, and what principles are driving that investment, because that determines what the world you're going to live in, basically. Yeah. We know that. We're looking at it in a minute. All investment is going into large language models, AI. etc. That's not a world I want to live in. I think it's a world that's going to pop. It's a world that's driving up climate, carbon levels in the atmosphere, etc., etc., etc. Yeah. So that's it. That's the book in a nutshell, basically, or rather large nutshell.
And you stole my segue. I was going to say this is a football podcast. Lots of what you just said was kind of my brain was fizzing with connections there. I thought maybe we could start with the two terms that you introduced quite early on there: bullshit scarcity and bullshit abundance.
Bullshit abundance and artificial scarcity.
Oh, artificial scarcity and bullshit abundance. Could we map that onto football?
Yeah. I mean, so
Right, let's.
yeah, that's pretty easy. Yeah.
Well done.
Because basically the idea of bullshit abundance is that, like, because investment decisions are made around what promises to offer the sort of the maximum amount of profitability. Promises, because quite often your companies aren't profitable. You're trying to capture a monopolistic position, etc., etc. Like that drives investment down a certain direction. It drives the sort of form of the economy in a certain direction. So the stuff that gets produced basically doesn't match up with what people need. And because of the structure of capitalism, as it's gone into stagnation, as it's gone into like much more rentier business models where you own stuff and you get rents from it. Basically, you control stuff. You own the rights to stream football things. You create an artificial scarcity around that. So that bullshit abundance is always paired with artificial scarcity, basically. Otherwise it doesn't work, basically. You have to get artificial scarcity around needs, etc. So it totally fits onto football, basically, because it does, when it's a complicated... The artificial scarcity one is easy, isn't it? They're trying to create a scarcity. Football, you used to be able to watch it on TV. Now you can't, on terrestrial type TV.
It's not just that you can't... there was artificial scarcity, so you had to buy a Sky subscription, right? Now there's artificial scarcity on the telly, so you have to buy a subscription to a streaming service.
Yeah.
It's they're finding new pockets.
Yeah. TNT, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I do subscribe to Sky, basically. You know what I mean? Or Sky Football. Yeah, it's really annoying. And I watch most Leeds away matches on a dodgy stream. Do you know what I mean? Cutting out with like an Arabic commentary, which I quite like, actually. It's very enthusiastic.
I got Discovery. Is it Discovery Plus purely for the Europa League final, and then got rid of it?
Yeah.
It's just bizarre.
No, it is insane. And part of that is like, it's this we have this thing of like increasing bullshit abundance. And there's this guy, Cory Doctorow, who's got this idea of like shitification of the internet, etc. And it's quite closely related to like this bullshit abundance sort of thesis. He starts it from platform capitalism. And like all the incentives are to like maximise the amount of rent you can draw off it at the cost of usability basis. You give loads of usability on a platform first of all, it's really useful this, then you start getting it less and less useful all the time. Adverts on your streaming service that you're getting, watch Netflix, and these days you've got an advert as well. It's like, how can I pay for this? Right, and that, so there's an inshitification of that sort of football, definitely. Like it's complicated applying bullshit abundance to football because it's like because basically the opposite of bullshit abundance would be radical abundance, which is like much more directed at what you need. What do you need from football? That's a football fan. What do you need from football is a complicated question. What you're after, do you know what I mean?
Different people are going to answer that question in really different ways.
Absolutely.
Not everybody's going to sort of do our kind of hippie-ish thing of droning on about like, community and commonality.
But I do think
I just want to fucking win.
yeah. Well, it is quite nice to win, but that's not why I go to football. It's not just the winning. It's like you're blowing your head off because it's it's Dominic Calvert-Lewis or Nemch's just scored in the 91st minute. He did against Derby the other day. And it's that I've got a season ticket holder, so that's why I go to football, is I enjoy those moments, etc. But I think there's a utopia moment in football. I'm going to mention football a little bit later when I try to explain what radical abundance is, basically. And then I go to this in the book we mentioned this guy Bernard Suits who writes about games, and he wrote this book called the Grasshopper, where I've probably mentioned this to Tom before, but where he's got this question of like, what do you do? What would people do in a world freed from necessity? And in a way, like we say, what radical abundance is partly, we have to reorganise production so that people decide on what gets invested in democratically, etc. Well, we sort of control these sorts of things. Therefore, we would be addressing needs. Therefore, that sort of fear you have about will I be able to pay the rent? Will I be able to eat food? That disappears. That's the realm of necessity.
Yeah.
You're doing things because you have to, because otherwise you're going to die. What happens if you outside of that realm? There's a question he asked this guy Bernard Suits, and he says, what we would do in that sort of world is we would play games, basically. And he defines games as the voluntary overcoming of unnecessary obstacles. So voluntarily setting up unnecessary obstacles and voluntarily overcoming them. So football, which is a game, it's the beautiful game.
the titular game.
The artificial, the voluntary. Voluntary overcoming of unnecessary obstacles. The unnecessary obstacle is we've got to move this ball into that net, but you can't use your hands because that would be the easiest way, and it would, handball in it. Pretty boring. Nobody watches that. So you have to use the rest of your body basically, and so there's this constriction, and then out of that comes like great art, in my opinion. Not always, obviously. I do support Leeds, and so games occupy this really odd place in a world which is dominated by necessity. They're a glimpse of that excess beyond necessity that you could have. Do you know what I mean? There's something utopian about that. We set this thing up basically, which is beyond necessity, which is I suppose it's leisure in it, but it's beyond that even. And I think there's that it's the glimpse of that utopia of like forming socialities and commonalities around something we choose, not because it's imposed on us, sort of thing.
Well,
and there's a glimpse of that
in Utopia a lot, haven't we? For years now, actually, on this project, and part of that was how much more enjoyable to watch and to play it would be if you sort of. Would being relegated from the Premier League. How does that map on to sort of scarcity and abundance?
Well, you ask me now, and I'd tell. Obviously, I really loved it. Leeds were in the Championship last year, had a great season. it's this really competitive sort of league. We did pretty well to win that competitive, but and then you go up and the first half of that of the not the first half, but the first half of the season that's already been played. For Leeds, it was like, this is what it's like in it. Basically, Arsenal come up and they just tonk you, and it's like, well, where's the joy in that? It's not a lot. But and so part of the reason it's complicated because the Premier League, because of this artificial scarcity thing and with the huge amounts of money coming off it, you get the best players in the world. That's nice, isn't it? And that creates this sort of there's a few different leagues in it. But then I think this season there's been some tactics have changed to accommodate. This is there's loads fewer goals being scored this season.
From corners.
Lots of long throws. I never thought I'd cheer a long throw from Ethan Ampadu, but I love him now. I love him. So tactics seem to have adjusted to I think it's addressed a little bit of that inequality in basically, this season it looks like elite players have been neutralised to some degree by a change in tactics, basically. Which is basically why Leeds have been performing better. We have a lot of elite players. I don't know what all of that gets us, but there's a utopian element in this bullshit about artificial scarcity, but it's really complicated, I think.
That's really hard to define with football, when it's sort of about common feeling, right, and a collective emotion. How does anyone map that economically? Yeah. But that there are we can certainly see the bullshit abundance. In every aspect of the game now, right? And what were we thinking about?
Well, there's a bullshit abundance of money in it. That's the root cause of the problems, basically. So you have rules like PSR coming in, and basically, which hang on, that suits the wealthiest. There's the same as the rest of the world.
Also thinking down to the kit, the vintage kits, and the merchandise and the stores and all that. Is it necessary? I don't know. It's interesting.
I was thinking about it in the context of the book. the distribution of players, which you touched on there, in terms of like elite football. But what feeds into elite football is obviously the academy system that we have in this country and in most countries. It's not like American sports, for example, where you have a draft, and even in French football it's done in a slightly different way. It seems like every year in England the FA changes the rules around academy recruitment so that Manchester City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Liverpool, whoever else can almost literally turn up at the training ground of a Leeds or a Southampton and just go, you, and you, and then off they go to these other academies, and you may get, you know, a little bit of money for them later on. You know, Max Elaine, who has just made it, he's just broken into the Man City team, was at Southampton for years and years and years. 16, off he goes. Like, we'll never see him again, although he hasn't exactly set the world alight. So it's like wealth or commodities, essentially, because these kids are effectively commodities, as much as they are labour, actually, in some ways. This is a bit of a vulgar Marxist kind of vibe now, but these commodities are much more unevenly distributed than ever before. And in order to make that happen, the Premier League is forcing the FA to literally change the rules to facilitate that happening. And all the while the FA are doing that, they're probably weakening their own national team that they are in charge of.
Yeah. I mean, we've known before about our teams being feeder teams for the big boys, basically. I'm hoping Leeds going to be the big boys now. I changed my tune. I'll be all in favour of it. It's not going to happen, is it?
Well, not unless you get some nutter in Dubai.
No, that's it. Yeah. I mean, like that inequality in sort of wealth, and you know that this sort of like urge towards like, you know, a European Super League. You know what I mean? It sort of dominates all sorts of stuff, and it comes at the cost of other stuff, like, such as like the England national team or your general enjoyment of football. Fewer players
who can. Well, you have probably more players than ever before in English football actually capable of producing these like head-exploding moments of brilliance, but they're much more unevenly distributed than ever before. You know, Man City can't squeeze all of their players who they've got who are capable of doing these sorts of things into an 11, whereas, you know, even Leeds this season have, you know, got maybe one.
All right, yeah. I mean, I would have had a different answer to this a couple of months ago, because I do think that, like, basically, in the Premier League, you know, it seems like a closer league this season. Maybe Wolves may not agree with you, but they've had a couple of wins, haven't they? Are winning a draw. It seems like a closer league, and I think it is to do with like tactics to nullify elite players, like in packing defences, basically. But packing defences and still being able to do transitions, basically, seems to be that seems to be the lead sort of
big
model.
Big lads, athletic lads,
physical, yeah.
Really great if you can do both.
Yeah. But you know, physicality over elite skill, I'm all for it. Proletarianise the sport.
I mean, I'm a bit of a romantic and obviously a bit of an idealist, but there's that saying in football now, isn't there? This is one of these weird sort of like cultural tropes in football, saying, you take that all day long. But it's like, you will take a header from a corner all day long, or a dirty sort of like scrappy goal from a long throw. You will take that all day long. But you would rather like see Matt Letizia flick it over two defenders' heads and roll it in the corner. Like you would. So you know, I think it still would be. You know.
Yeah. We had Rafinha for 2 seasons.
You had
Rafinha.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And they didn't like him, did they? That much.
No, we did. Yeah. We scored once. He went on his hands and knees and crawled across Ellen Road in forgiveness. Yeah.
What was the context for that?
Did we lose? I think we might have lost. And in penance, he just got his knees and did that right up the pitch, basically. And everyone was just like clapping him. And then when
Very slow motion of the Adebayo thing, like running.
yeah.
I was going to say, you said maybe we won't get into PCPs, but just to touch on it. PCPs and football?
Yeah, a mate of mine who's a big Leeds fan, Mickey Peaker, wrote a book called The People's Shame, which he sort of maps out what the Premier League could be like as a public-owned partnership with teams as public-owned partnerships. Because it's sort of like public-owned partnerships where the public is sort of like the state is some sort of quasi-state. So, you know, one of the things about football is that they aren't institutions. They are like, they don't quite exist in a, you know, outside of, in a sort of as a just normal capitalist commodity. Therefore, like it could sort of make sense for the local authority to have some sort of input into how a club would be run. It certainly makes sense to have like fans having some sort of input into that.
I always worry about like wage suppression there though. Like, do we as like fans want to be effectively suppressing players' wages?
Well, but it's also like one of the whole points of this is to make investment decisions. Like, you can't have fans making decisions about what players are bad. You have to have a manager or a coach to make those sort of decisions.
Imagine the sort of havoc that I would wreak if I was like in charge of making those decisions
on a week-by-week basis.
Yeah.
But like,
it wouldn't be many weeks.
But one of the things, so what you'd do is you'd have a football side, then you'd have like, what do you do with the profits? Well, that's a tricky thing in terms of football, of course, right?
Yes.
But like surpluses can come off football, football jersey manufacture, all these sorts of things, basically, and then that goes. You have the local community deciding what happens to that money.
Yeah.
Like, what do we want to see in our local area around the stadium, etc.
You probably want the shirts and what have you to be manufactured in the area, actually, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. I think we're being told to sort of like.
We should find out now.
Stuff like now we're going to learn about radical abundance, but you will have to buy the book if you want to know about that. Bye.
Thanks. I've given you all my best lines now.
Yeah, it's only piece up, is it?